Yellarigu Namaskara. Honorable Martin Luther King III, Professor S.K. Thoratji, Kailash Satyarthi ji, Professor Jaffet ji, Prakash Ambedkar ji, Chief Minister Siddaramaiah ji, Kharge ji, Dr. Parmeshwara, Dr. H.C. Mahadevappa, Shri Anjanaya ji, respected dignitaries, delegates from all over the world, members of the conference organizing committee, friends, and friends from the media. I can see a lot of people I recognize, and quite a few I don't. I'd like to welcome all of you here. It's an honor for me. It's a real honor for me to address this conference. It's designed to take forward the vision of a great Indian. It's designed to take forward the vision of Mr. Ambedkar. And I am very, very proud to be standing here addressing this conference. Friends, truth and power are not the same thing. Anyone who has fought power knows how wide the gulf between the two can be. But power is intoxicating, and it has a magical ability to convince those in its way that truth is its servant. Millions have been swept away by the menacing magic of power. The strength of leaders like Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Martin Luther King is that they spoke truth to power. They stood in front of the tiger, looked right inside his eye, and told him they were not afraid. This does not happen overnight. It takes persistence. It takes courage. It requires tremendous suffering. Men like Mr. Ambedkar are beaten for their defiance. They are humiliated for it, abused for it, imprisoned for it. And in the case of Gandhiji and Mr. King, they are even killed for it. Mr. Ambedkar is great because he stood for truth. It did not matter how powerful the people who were standing against him were. But he told them clearly that there is a difference between power and truth. And the truth is what I am standing for, what I am fighting for. That is what makes Ambedkar ji great. There was a very different kind of man called Hitler. And he once wrote, and I quote, "Keep a very firm grasp on reality. Keep a very firm grasp on reality so you can strangle it at any time." Today, this is what is happening all around us. The strangulation of reality. They say Rohit Vemula committed suicide. They call it suicide. I call it murder. They call it suicide. I call it murder. Rohit was crushed and murdered by the indignities he suffered. He was killed only because he was a Dalit. The instrument of his murder was the letter written to his university by the government of India. A letter that destroyed his future forever. Muhammad Akhlaq is butchered because they say he stole a calf. It was a lie. And instead of questioning his brutal killing, the questions they ask are about whether the meat in the fridge was mutton or beef. Thousands of farmers commit suicide. And the government looks the other way. I'm very proud that Siddaramaiah ji recently announced a farm loan waiver for the farmers of Karnataka. But the government of India does not listen to the farmers. They look the other way. The government can forgive any amount of corporate debt. They call those corporate write-offs. But farmers, they are forgiven nothing. One fine evening, the Prime Minister comes on TV and he tells 1/5 of humanity that he has decided that the money in their pocket is worthless. The entire cabinet is locked up in a room. The economic advisor to the Prime Minister himself has no idea what is going on. Thousands of businesses are wiped out. Hundreds of people simply die. The informal economy literally implodes. Privately, our friends in the press call it insanity. But publicly, they call it a stroke of genius. Privately, they call it insanity. Publicly, they call it a stroke of genius. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister video conferences himself into a pop concert. Instead of speaking to Parliament, Narendra Modi ji chooses to speak to Coldplay. The emperor is completely naked, but nobody around him has the courage to tell him. The emperor is completely naked, but nobody around him has the courage to tell him. There is a dangerous new global epidemic. The powerful have convinced themselves that they can strangle reality. They're absolutely certain that they have a monopoly on the truth. And they have diverted all their energy and resources in maintaining this huge lie. For the powerful to capture the present, they have to distort the past. To convince us that they can provide us a perfect future, they have to show us that there was once a perfect past. Mr. Modi talks about plastic surgery and Ganesh ji. He talks about nuclear weapons and flying chariots in ancient India. About a perfect country without misery, without poverty and without the crime of caste. Well, let me tell you, he's lying. India had great strengths. India had great strengths. But it also had its weaknesses. Like you and me, it will always have its strengths, but it will also have its flaws. It will never ever be perfect. Nothing that is alive ever is. The BJP wants to paint a lie over India so that they can return it to a forgotten time, a forgotten age. An age where people were humiliated by power, where people's voices were crushed, where the poor and the weak were trampled upon, where millions and millions of Indians were untouchable. An age of kings and no questions. An age of great wealth for a few and misery and abject poverty for everyone else. The truth is that embedded in the history of India is the betrayal of the weakest by the powerful. India lost its independence because when the British arrived on our soil, millions of our people kept quiet. Millions of Indians lawyers, soldiers, leaders kept quiet and allowed the British to do exactly what they pleased because they were powerful. And that is exactly what is happening today. When a journalist doesn't write about the violence in front of her eyes, when a judge gets pressurized into giving a judgment, when a policeman blinds a little child, or a businessman keeps quiet to get a better deal, that is exactly what is happening. India's freedom was not simply taken away by the British. It was handed over to them by some Indians. We must never forget this. We lost our voice because we surrendered it. And this is exactly what Modi and the RSS want. They want India to surrender its voice. The lie of the perfect past is designed to rob people of their voice, their vote, and their power. There are two ways to rob people of their voice. The first is to frighten them into submission. And the other is to shout so loudly that no one else can be heard. Narendra Modi ji and the RSS are doing exactly that. What is happening today is the systematic capture of India's democratic institutions by the Prime Minister, by the bureaucracy, and by the RSS. The aim is to mutilate the Indian Constitution, which was given to us by Sri Ambedkar. That is the aim, to mutilate the Constitution given to us by Mr. Ambedkar. The idea is to do to one man, one vote exactly what they did to Rohit Vemula and Muhammad Akhlaq. Do not forget that. Every single Indian will be robbed of her voice. Every single Indian will be robbed of his future. We must all keep a firm grip on reality. We must never ever allow them to strangle it. As Baba Sahib said, let us educate, agitate, and organize. Let us make sure that these people understand the spirit of India, the spirit of Ambedkar ji, and the spirit of Gandhi ji. Thank you very much. All the best. Jai Hind.